Welcome to the Sherman Report. Here's Peter Sherman.
The end of another week and still lots to talk about. Stephen Ledrew will share some thoughts on our immigration minister's confidence in the system. Really? Can you send me some of what he's smoking? And what is Mark Carney up to? Mark Carney, late of the Bank of Canada, the Bank of England, and most recently talking to the Liberal caucus in Nanaimo. And just how badly the charming Justin Trudeau is going to lose in the next election. All of that coming your way from Stephen Ledrew. Stay tuned. I'll tell you of an Israeli newspaper article about a Dubai-based journalist who thinks Israel is making Iranian proxies look like idiots. He's right, of course, but I always thought they could do that all by themselves. Word salad. Heard the phrase? Word salad. That's because it's become the new catchphrase, repeatedly now being used by detractors of Kamala Harris. She has never yet held a news conference because, to my mind, she seems to have bypassed the ability to be prepared for whatever a well-researched journalist might throw at her. I have a word salad for you, Kamala, but we're not together. Should young Gazan refugees here in Canada be taught a curriculum designed and used by the Palestinian Authority or by our own educators? You think about that one. There's an answer. That and more coming up right after this.
Now, the Sherman Report continues.
And we are back. And just like magic, Stephen Ledrew joins us on screen. Hi, Stephen.
How are you, Peter? Good afternoon.
I'm doing well. I like the end of the week, it's somehow or other. This is not real work. This is what I do, but it's not real work. However, when Friday comes, I say, gee, Saturday and Sunday, I can sort of hang around and sleep late and things like that. So I'm fine.
Good for you.
So I have to say,
can I answer your last question that you just put in your thing about that? I saw that today about the Gazan students that are here in Canada to give them a break from it's a terrible, it's a tough place over there, and being taught their own curriculum, which is to hate Jews, hunt them down.
Amongst other things.
But they do that. I saw an interview with a Gazan teenager a few weeks ago. She was 13, intelligent, nice, well-dressed, well put together and everything. And she said, the stuff she said about Jews, I won't even say to offend, people who Jewish might be in your audience. But I could not believe what she was saying, and she was saying with a straight face. And she said, well, that's just the way. That's what it is. I mean, they are awful, terrible people. I've been taught that since I was a little wee girl, and they should all be killed. I mean, why would we allow that in Canada?
I don't know. I don't even know why we allow Gazans in Canada. Countries next door to them, like dozens of them, won't allow them.
We're 5,000 of them with their family, and not every Gazan is Hezbollah or anything. But you know what? Our security screening. Your first point was about Miller, and he was asked he's Minister of Immigration. He was asked in a committee, do you have confidence in our security screening after that father and son, known terrorists, were invited back into Canada and became citizens, and then they were arrested in Toronto area a little while ago for that thing? And he said, "Oh, I have every confidence in the system."
You're out of your mind. Look, let me go back for a second to the Gazans. I've seen pages of books that are used to teach in schools that are under the Palestinian Authority. Yep. Purportedly, I can't produce one right now, but I've seen them. And the math problems, for example, you say, oh, well, they're only teaching them to hate Jews. That's in learning about their backgrounds of their lives. No, they're not. It's like there are 10 Jews working in the field. You sneak in and kill 5 of them. How many Jews are left living? That's how they teach math. So do I want the Palestinian Authority's curriculum to be taught in Canada? I don't think so.
I know, but any of the authorities in Canada, I'll tell you, if that was in the Toronto School Board, they would say, "Oh, fine, make them feel comfortable." And those, by the way, those books are paid for by the United Nations, which makes it even more egregious.
UNRWA.
So it's like this is insanity, and Canada is becoming complicit in that insanity. The Toronto School Board, is one of the worst offenders in the country. But other school boards and other municipal councils, they just seem to go along with this. It's just we need some leadership in Canada, and we need the average Canadian thinks our leadership in Canada needs to be changed. I guess that's the bottom line, Peter.
Well, what we need in the TDSB, by way of example, because it's the one I know of best, is we need a real rethink of how leadership works at the top. And I'm not talking about anyone in particular at this point. I'm saying at all times we should have a leadership that has the ability, regardless of what their own background is, to look at the greater good of Canadian students living in Toronto, which is 100 plus different backgrounds and nationalities. And we have to reflect all of that. But in the end, what they have to come out of the other side ready for high school in, and high school is also under TDSB, and ready for university in, is Canada. This is where you live. It's Canada. We want to teach you about Canada. And you're here ostensibly because you want to be a Canadian. If you didn't want to be a Canadian, stay where the hell you were.
Well, it's not safe to be where they were. So they come to Canada. It's like a hotel. And they get great dental care, health care, education. And then they go somewhere else. I mean, there is something that is winding its way through Ottawa. And I think it's an important factor is that how long can a Canadian citizen live out of the country? We saw that with the airlift from Lebanon. I don't know, it's probably 13 years ago.
I remember that. We spent $85 million.
Yeah, people who had not been in Canada for the last 40 years. All of a sudden, here's my Canadian passport. Bring me home.
I'll tell you what, Stephen, put me on this list. I don't agree, and not just for Canada, I don't agree with such a thing as dual citizenship. I know people who have it. They feel fortunate to have it. Some are related to me, but dual citizenship is a bad thing because you can go and live in some other country, as you used the Lebanese example. It doesn't matter. There have been others.
Yep.
And when anything goes wrong, and some of those countries, you left in the first place because things go wrong, but you run back there with your dual citizenship. They welcome you with open arms. And now things go wrong again, and we're supposed to fly you home. I don't think that works. One citizenship.
But it does work. It works in Canada, our Canada right now, and it should be changed.
That's all I'm saying.
But
let me ask you, you had some thoughts you started to advance on the immigration system in Canada. Now, if it worked the way it was designed to work, people would apply, they would go for an interview or many interviews, they would supply working credentials, documents like degrees, apprenticeships that they've earned, letters from employers or prior employers, wherever they're coming from, because you can always get that kind of stuff. Yep. And after that, the process usually, as I understand it, takes somewhere around 5 years, and you get notified that you are rejected or accepted. And if you go the 5 years, you probably were accepted, and you're going to come here. And most of our backgrounds reflect that. Mine does. I'm sure yours does. And so our forebears were accepted, and we wound up being good Canadians. And I welcome anybody who wants to do that. We need great immigrants to build Canada. And you know why? Because we're a failure at making babies. We just keep trying. Keep trying, if you get my general drift. Anyway,
my ancestors were newfies. We're really good at making babies.
Yeah, my ancestors were too, but nobody can afford it anymore.
That's a very good point. The other thing, though, at the time of 5 years is a bit long, but we have a dearth of nurses, doctors, all kinds of trades in this country. There are people trained in those trades and professions around the world.
And they want to be here.
We aren't bringing them in. No. However, we are bringing in everybody who just wants to come in and who has a relative here.
You want to come to Canada? Be a refugee.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not knocking refugees. There are real refugees in the world, and they deserve some place to go where they can thrive.
Right.
However, if you just say you're a refugee and you're running away from, pick a country, chances are good you'll get in Canada. You'll get in on a temporary work visa, and ultimately, we know what happens. You're going to stay.
And they're going to deliver pizzas for the rest of your life.
Maybe better than that.
Maybe, I hope so. But I mean, right now, we have a terrible problem with immigrants, refugees in this country. We don't have sufficient housing, sufficient education, sufficient healthcare for them. And indeed, we should not be we should not be the first resort for anybody who wants to come to somewhere else in the world.
No, we shouldn't be. And you mentioned Mark Miller, who's our immigration minister of the day. I say of the day because I never heard of the guy and maybe never will again. You don't know with this cabinet. The bottom line, though, is he has said, he's asserted publicly that he is confident in the security checks we do on foreigners, all foreigners. And I don't believe him, because you mentioned the father and son terrorist, and then the lone guy is a terrorist. If we did such great checks, what are terrorists doing here? And would you bet me there are no more? Because I don't think that would be right.
Oh, there's lots more. And the Gazans, as you mentioned, I mean, there's just no checks on them. And if there were checks, they'd be imperfect checks. For him, Miller is in the cabinet because he is a longtime friend of the prime minister. He was in the prime minister's wedding party. That's how far back they go. And
did he have to look far to get people to come to the wedding party? Sorry.
And that's why he's there. The man is a moron. And he has been in every portfolio that he has served in, but he can do what he wants because he is secure in that. So for him to say to a parliamentary committee this week, I have every confidence in the security of Canada, like it's just, he's a moron because our security checks are crazy.
Well, look, let's jump to the prime minister because, you and I can talk for an hour, but we don't do it. We do it for 15 minutes, and I see we've done it for 12. So we have a few minutes left, and I think there are a few topics we could hit, but there's one I really want to hit because you wrote, I believe it was in The Sun, about this week. And the article that you penned had an interesting headline saying Trudeau is Canada's most destructive and charming prime minister. Now, I've met the guy. I talk about him a lot. I'm not crazy about him. I can't wait for him to say goodbye. But I will say this. In the one time that we met, shook hands, and had a chat, he was very personable, nice guy, tall guy, good-looking guy. He was all of those things. But as a prime minister...
Well, first of all, I've met him and talked to him. I know him, not well. I always think when women say he's great looking, I think he looks like Al Bundy off that series from years and years and years ago. Aside from that, though, he can be very charming, and he is a complete moron as well. And he has ruined Canada, not beyond repair, but his policies are those of a socialist progressive. And this is my point: is he is not a liberal. He was elected because he was head of the Liberal Party. He got rid of all the senators, all the smart old liberals. He got rid of the party executive, Peter. The party is moribund. The riding association. So there's no one there to give him any guidance except for people in his wedding party. And he's
you yourself a couple of weeks ago on this program said that the reason that you're not a supporter of the Liberal Party is it isn't liberal anymore.
I'm still a liberal. People say, "Oh, you're not a liberal. You're sitting and talking, agreeing with Peter Sherman sometimes." Well, I'm a liberal. The party is not liberal. The government is not liberal. It is just full of socialists, and he himself is not a liberal. So it's my point is Canadians deserve an election, Peter. We need an election as quickly as possible. And for the
go tell Jagmeet Singh and Yves-François Blanchet that.
Yeah,
what a couple of turkeys.
He's not a turkey. He's getting whatever he can for Quebec.
Well, that's what he's doing. But I got to sit here. I'm a born Quebecer and I speak fluent French, and I've got nothing against Quebec's aspirations. But I've got to say, when the control of the Parliament of Canada rests with people who are there, by their own admission, to grab whatever they can for Quebec, I got a problem with that.
Get those toys, get that money, get whatever we can get.
That's right.
Now we've got Trudeau by the shorts, and we're going to just ring up until we can go back to the electorate and say, look what we got for you. Elect us again.
There you are.
Then Trudeau, as I said, Canadians deserve, they deserve an election. They've been propped up, this government's been propped up by the NDP for far too long. Now the NDP starting to realize how bad this government is. And so we got the bloc coming in. I mean, it's a shambles in Ottawa.
So what's the worst that can happen? The worst that can happen is we wait till next October when the time clock runs out anyway.
Just how bad do you think it can get between now and a year, October? Trudeau can spend more money. Our debt can go crazy. Our inflation can go up. We can have more people out of jobs than you ever thought possible.
My short answer is pretty freaking bad. I didn't want to use that other word. Have a great weekend, Stephen. Stephen Ledrew, political action figure, lawyer by profession, and a man about town, joining us here on the Sherman Report. And everybody, have a good weekend.
It's a great privilege. Thanks, Peter. Cheers.
Right.
You're with the Sherman Report. Daily news commentary available at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, with video posted on YouTube and Facebook. Here's Peter Sherman.
Have you heard the term word salad recently? Word salad. If you pay attention to mainstream media or social media or any outlet that's discussing presidential politics, and particularly the presidential hopeful Kamala Harris, you'll hear two things. One is that she speaks in word salads. What that means is that she answers any question in a much too long response to anything but the question posed, and she uses a very sincere sounding voice when she does it, and often throws in some accent that isn't her natural way of speaking. I'm going to show you a 2-minute reply to a question she was asked by Oprah Winfrey. See if you can figure out what that question actually was, to which Kamala was responding.
We love our country. I love our country. I know we all do. That's why everybody's here right now. We love our country. We take pride in the privilege of being American. And this is a moment where we can and must come together as Americans, understanding we have so much more in common than what separates us. Let's come together with the character that we are so proud of about who we are, which is we are an optimistic people. We are an optimistic people. Americans, by character, are people who have dreams and ambitions and aspirations. We believe in what is possible. We believe in what can be. And we believe in fighting for that. That's how we came into being. Because the people before us understood that one of the greatest expressions for the love of our country, one of the greatest expressions of patriotism, is to fight for the ideals of who we are, which includes freedom to make decisions about your own body, freedom to be safe from gun violence, freedom to have access to the ballot box, freedom to be who you are and just be, to love who you love openly and with pride, freedom to just be. And that's who we are. We believe in all that. And so this is a moment where we stand knowing what we are fighting for. We're not fighting against. It's what we're fighting for.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Vice President.
There you go, applauding on cue. Interesting, the only comment that I heard from Oprah, who's the questioner, was, at one point near the end. Anyway, Kamala sounds like she's stringing words together and being very sincere, and then doing it again. Much of this relates right back to her well-crafted, and I might say by others, acceptance speech at last month's Democratic National Convention. Some, indeed many people, are buying it. Some are not. Take this young black woman who by her looks would be assumed, I suppose, by some to be the embodiment of a Harris voter. This runs a little over 2 minutes, but it's telling because this unnamed woman has figured out what's wrong with the Kamala Harris picture. Watch.
Kamala Harris, you are as fake as press-on nails, and I can see right through you. Let me help you out with something, because maybe somebody must not have told you. On TV and on every interview, giving the same tired answer. So let me just help you out. When you are asked a question, why don't you try answering the question? People are not stupid. We can tell when you're dancing around the issue instead of answering the question. When you're asked, are people better off now or during Donald Trump's presidency? When you're asked about the border or your policies on immigration, answer the question. We don't care about your middle class upbringing. We don't care that your mama had to save up to buy a house. We don't care about your summer job at McDonald's. We don't care about the lawns of the neighborhood that you lived in and how everybody took care of their lawn. That does not matter to me, and it doesn't matter to anybody else. I want you to answer the question. Because if people, my mind is already made up too, Kamala, because I can see right through you and I know that you fake. But for somebody else whose mind is not made up, let me just help you out. Answer the question so that they can decide between you and your opponent. I don't know if you're just trying to paint him as the villain and try to skate by to be like you the hero or a nice person. We don't care about that. Because being a hero and voting for the nice person is not what pays the bills. You understand what I'm saying? We can see through you. And that fake black accent that you keep doing, girl, you need to stop. Because you know good and well that you ain't got no black accent. You know good and well that you was born from San Francisco and in Canada. Where you get that black accent from? Stop doing that trying to be relatable. This does not make you relatable. It makes you look fake. And those of us like me, we can see through that. We can see through that. We can see through every interview that you do, that instead of answering the questions that are on the minds of the millions of American people who have the power to elect you to the highest office in the land, you're dancing around the issue. And you want to talk about how you was born a middle-class kid and how your mother had to save up to buy a house. I don't care, Kamala. So just to recap, stop dancing around the issue. Answer the question. If you're going to do an interview, answer a question that you are asked at the interview.
So I've made it clear that I fear for the United States going forward under Kamala Harris. And hence, I feel for all of us Western people. Why? Because the Americans provide the central spoke of the umbrella that covers us all. And I need to know the American president has the stones to take on all comers. And I feel ill at ease thinking about Kamala Harris occupying that office. Is Donald Trump perfect? Well, hardly. I'm not stupid, but neither is Donald Trump. His odd attributes are glaring, but he can lead. He can lead and he can move America forward. My take, but there'll be much more to chew on in the 6.5 weeks that are left before people get busy voting.
You're with the Sherman Report. Daily news commentary available at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, with video posted on YouTube and Facebook. Here's Peter Sherman.
I was reading an Israeli publication today called World Israel News Today. A friend sent it over, and the paper features an article about an Emirates-based strategic analyst, that's the way he's described, who blasts Iranian proxy terror groups saying, and I'm quoting, "Israel has sent you back 1,000 years," unquote. It's important to note that the United Arab Emirates, which centers on Dubai and where this fellow is based, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, that's the Emirates, they're quite friendly with Israel, and they do business together, even feature El Al Israeli Airlines flights going between Dubai and Tel Aviv, regularly scheduled. Let me read a little of the article, since this is a news publication without any video. A journalist and strategic analyst focused on Middle Eastern affairs from the United Arab Emirates took aim at Iranian-backed anti-Israel terrorist groups on Wednesday, castigating them for the attacks on Israel on October 7th and mocking Hezbollah after a pair of apparent Israeli attacks left thousands of terrorists injured. Talking about the pagers and the walkie-talkies, of course. Amjad Taha, author of The Deception of the Arab Spring, excoriated Hamas and Hezbollah in a tweet Wednesday evening while cheering a pair of attacks widely attributed to Israel, targeting Hezbollah terrorists in Lebanon and Syria. "You dared to strike at a smart and courageous nation on October 7th, committing genocide, kidnapping their children, and violating their women," Taha wrote. "You thought they would fall, but they rose again, returning after 11 months to correct what had only momentarily slipped, their intelligence. Now they will send you back 1,000 years to a time without technology, where a ringtone feels like a death knell and a beep is a nightmare." So once upon a time, when they were in fashion in Canada, I was associated with a company that actually sold pagers, handy little things. But then the ones we sold were not made to explode. Seems the people in Hezbollah dealt with other vendors. Not often you hear someone of similar background tell these thugs just how incredibly stupid they are. So to those who think Jews are the docile people who placidly marched into gas chambers and crematoria once upon a time, guess again. Jewish people take nothing for granted. They are peaceful until provoked, and then they punish their enemies. Many have said this before. I'll say it now. Never again.
You're with the Sherman Report. Daily news commentary available at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, with video posted on YouTube and Facebook. Here's Peter Sherman.
We Canadians, thanks to Prime Minister Trudeau, are the only country in the world inviting Gazan refugees to come over and integrate with Canada and the Canadian people. I and many others have asked the question about why no country, not one, not even mainly Muslim countries in the Middle East, wants even a single one of these people. But Trudeau, being the open and jolly fellow we know him to be, is different. Okay, he has the job and he did it his way. I accept that. Is it okay with you if the curriculum that is offered here to Gazan children, the child refugees of Gaza, becomes a curriculum filled with the same hatred that has sustained Gaza for all these years? The National Post today featured a front page story. It mentions condemnation by Canada's Jewish community of an offer from the Palestinian Authority, no less, to teach its curriculum to kids recently arrived in Canada from Gaza. They call it unacceptable and blatantly inappropriate. Oh, yeah, of course they do. They're only Jews. That might be what some people say, right? Some of you are saying that right now. If that's you, you might think about having a mental examination. And that goes for anyone from anywhere, because this is Canada. Canada, while far from perfect, rejects hate. It's not hate against Jews or hate against any particular group. Canada rejects hate. It's one of the hallmarks of the country. The Palestinian Authority, or PA, controls the West Bank. They've offered the curriculum via Google form. Ain't the internet great? Come one. Well, not quite, but they urge rapid sign-up as soon as possible. The head of CIJA, the Center for Israel and Jewish Affairs, has said that this curriculum has been widely condemned for spreading anti-Semitic hate and rejecting any two-state solution. He acknowledges that Canada tries hard to support newcomers to imbue them with Canadian values. But Shimon Fogel rightly says that teaching hatred on Canadian soil is blatantly inappropriate. Mona Abu Amara is Palestinian ambassador to Canada, and she asserts that this is one network for all the Gazan kids who have been dismissed from their homes and are unable to continue taking their courses. So we are starting with gathering the information. That's what she says. Basically, the ministry would then provide help for them so they won't lose any more time or years of education. Seems we have about 200 Gazans here now under special temporary residency programs launched in 2023. That's from Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada. So here's a piece of news for the ambassador, the Gazans, and for anyone from anywhere who seeks to make Canada home. And there aren't many people on temporary resident visas who don't want to stay, ultimately. This is Canada. I said it before. It's nowhere else. It's Canada. Everyone is equal under the law. Hate speech is not tolerated under the law. And hate speech is anywhere anyone speaks ill about anyone else in a hateful manner. Want to check the reading matter in your curriculum, Ambassador? Yes, you can report back. The country has enough problems without inviting more right inside our home. It's kind of like Trojan horse, you know what I mean? You live here, okay. We teach you the same curriculum as all Canadian kids get. We're all equal. We come to learn. We read, we write, we add, we subtract, we multiply, we divide, we take phys ed classes. We learn proper English and mostly proper French. we are taught what right and wrong mean, and that they include stating or implying that one group is lesser than any other group. Ambassador, take your Palestinian curriculum and teach it over there, where it's automatic, not here, where people of all backgrounds agree that every person in Canada has the same rights and privileges, no more and no less. Thanks, everybody, for being with us today and all week. I'm Peter Sherman. Have a great weekend.
The Sherman Report, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and the video version at YouTube, Facebook, and always at petersherman.com. Thanks for listening to The Sherman Report. If you'd like to connect with Peter directly, just go to petersherman.com.